Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 6th LSM's Corner. This is right before the Hell event, so I've mostly talked about the public details of the Hell event already in the news. I'm not going to be providing more details quite yet. Those will be announced when the event opens up. We're kind of keeping things quiet to make it a little bit of a surprise. But quick update on status of things. I'll start with my hands because that's been the recurring thing for about a month now. Um, they are still making progress. I'm able to do small amounts of work, like 10, 15 minutes here and there, maybe once or twice a day. I'm continuing to work on stretching and then alternating work days with rest days. And so I'm basically able to do small amounts of work while still uh, working on getting my hands to recover. I'm not 100% sure exactly when I'll be up to like doing full 8-hour days or 10-hour days again, but it's making progress at least, so that's good. Things coming soon. Most of this is in the news already. I made a post about it, but the Hell event is coming up starting this Friday, June 9th. Might be late Friday because we're cutting it a little bit close on the timetable. Then we'll have the tournament. Registration for the tournament is going to start later on. The exact dates are in the news. I think it's about June 16th that the registration will open up. And the tournament matches themselves will actually start on July 1st. So we got all that coming up. Should be pretty fun. The tournament's going to have, people can enter 2 characters in it. You can enter in multiple divisions. So in theory, you could enter as many as 4 divisions. Because if you enter 2 characters from different ranks, right, you could enter each of them in both 1v1 and 3v3 divisions. So you could enter as many as 4 divisions. And based on the fact that you could do that, I decided to limit the number of characters um, people can put in because one of our major problems with tournaments is people missing matches. So I wanted to sort of cut down on that, and I wanted to focus people in on which characters they care more about. Instead of just, entering all their characters, maybe not caring about their rank 4 or their rank 6 and just not showing up to its matches. I want to make sure people are entering characters they care more about and they're more likely to show up for the matches. It's also a matter of the more characters and more matches we have, the harder the scheduling is. You guys have no idea what a nightmare scheduling for these tournaments is. It's probably one of the hardest parts of running the tournament. So we have to take some things into account to make sure that we're able to schedule the tournament well. Anyways, I'll go ahead and move on to the questions, starting with future update and feature questions. So first up, after plans for masks and new races, etc., would it be possible for races to have a final form, like Ichigo's final Getsuga Tensha or Aizen's Pokemon Fairy form? Yeah. Okay, that's pretty funny because I agree that at the end of it, Aizen's final form was a little bit like, okay, he's like a butterfly now or something. Like, okay, yeah. Okay, anyways, back to the question. Or Eisen's Pokemon Fairy form, but the cost makes it ideal for a last resort and can only be activated under certain criteria and lasts 1 turn after activation. So I'm not entirely opposed to this idea, although there are a lot of it could be potentially really overpowered or really hard to balance or things like that. I think it's possible we'll do this, but probably not for a while. So maybe eventually, but I don't have any plans for this, and I'm not going to make any plans for it right now. We'll explore the possibility after all of this stuff, like Vizard and everything, is actually in. Then we'll see. We'll think about it. It also may depend on if I end up putting Quincy in and what the details on Quincy are and all that. Next question. An option to reject healing is sorely needed, as some don't want healing between bosses or by ghost squads. Yes, I agree. I'll put in probably a heal blacklist. Probably heal blacklist is probably the best way to solve this. I also had a thought about this, and I may do for ghost squads. I may make it so whenever somebody in a ghost squad earns a squad or faction point, that squad or faction point gets sent to a random squad or faction. So that way they would still be helping out the race. It would just be, like let's say you heal someone, you gain 2 squad points. Maybe those would go to like squad 7, and then the next time maybe like squad 4. So it would be random, and that way the squad points aren't being wasted, so to speak. Next question: if rank 4 can get sword tokens, could we possibly make a sword token exchange with some serious anti-abuse setup so as to deter cheating. Okay, I think there's sort of a misunderstanding on when I say sword tokens being tradable would be abusable. I don't mean like I don't mean abusable like someone could find some way to like hack the system or something like that. That's not what I mean at all. What I mean is that just being able to buy sword tokens circumvents so much of why the sword tokens are in the game. So the sword tokens being in the game, it's very necessary that they're not tradable, and the only way to earn them is actually by earning them. That's very important for the sword token system to be able to work properly in the game. So that's part of the system's inherent design, and I'm not going to be trading it. With that said, for rank 4 that can't actually use the sword tokens, although they can save them for when they rank up, but assuming they're a permanent rank 4, what I may do is I may make the tokens sellable to the system, like just the game itself, sellable for like maybe a flat amount, maybe like a million yen for each token, or that might be a little bit excessive, maybe like 100,000 yen for each token or something like that. Maybe a little bit more, 250. There's some balance there. So some monetary amount I think would provide a good trade-off for trading in your token. Next question. I'd like to see the option to send a percentile of earned fraction points to other fractions between 5 to 50% with the percentile and target frac being chosen by the player. To elaborate it, I want it so if I earn 1,000 fraction points in a month, I can set it so 50% of my points go to fraction 7, or 25% goes to fraction 6, 7, 8, and 9 accordingly. Yeah, so this is not something I think is really. There's supposed to be like a little bit of friendly rivalry between the fractions, and it would be really weird for someone from one fraction to be giving points to another fraction. However, like I said earlier, with the Ghost Squad thing I'm doing, where their points would go to random fractions, that may accomplish what you're looking for. Who knows? Next question. Ballad players are too effective at stalling. What are your thoughts on fixing this? I don't know if I put this in the right category. Uh, Anti-stall mechanics. So I talked about this a little bit before, but basically there's a couple people sometimes try to target it on one area of stalling. Like Ice AoE is really strong at stalling, or Heal AoE is really strong, Bind's really strong. The fact is there's a lot of options, and if someone chooses to like focus their build towards stalling, they can pretty much do it. So focusing on any one area is not going to fix the problem. What I need to do instead is make a comprehensive system that looks at all of your actions in a fight and determines, are you actually trying to win, or are you just stalling to prolong the battle? And in the event that someone is only stalling to prolong the battle, like let's say using mostly defensive abilities and not really using attacks, stuff like that, then the system will make it very hard for them to continue that or make it not viable. There's a number of ways this could be done. I haven't decided on the specifics. This is going to be something that I'm going to put up a prototype and I'm going to try it out and refine it um, over a couple of weeks. But some options include, for instance, the most obvious one would be adding pool drain. So like, let's say the system has identified that you are stalling, right? It could just put, let's say, 200 pool drain per turn on you. So regardless of whatever else you do, it drains an extra 200 pools per turn, something like that. And then depending on how severe your stalling is, maybe you can ramp that up or down. That's one way. Another way could be like reducing effectiveness of defensive abilities, putting global cooldowns on defensive abilities. There's a number of options. And I'm going to try to, uh, rather than trying to say which one specifically I might want to do, let me just tell you my goals with the system, because that's what's going to be more towards. I want to make the system so that if you are legitimately trying to fight and trying to win, you will not be punished by this system. The system should only be uh, making things harder for people who are trying to drag out the fight, just to purposely extend the fight, not trying to survive in order to find a window to attack, but just trying to drag out the fight. That's what I'm going to try and focus the system on, so that people who are like not trying to drag out the fight don't get like unduly caught by it and suddenly find pool drain on them. That's what I'm going to work towards. I may not get there immediately because complex gameplay systems are hard, but I will continue to work on it until we get to that point. That looks like that's it for the future update and feature questions. Next up is game questions. First question, where did you get the avatars for the Arankar AI drawn? I'm thinking of getting some done for my character. Okay, so unfortunately, the artists that drew the art either are not on WoB or they're busy with other stuff and don't have time for more commissions. right now. But the artists that drew the AI art include Miyavi, who no longer plays Wob. Um, then there was Kari drew some. I don't remember if she drew any of the Rankar AI. And then there is also Oracion, who's currently very busy with school stuff. And then there's Isago, who's currently also busy with real life stuff. So, in terms of getting things done for your character, currently none of the people I used would be available for that. Um, yeah. Next question. What would you say the ratio is for players with custom swords versus those who don't have them? Excellent question. Um, since this is actually a very curious question, I will look it up right now. And in the meantime, I'll talk about uh, the relevance because I just added in the sword token update, which actually makes it so that people who even can't spend shards uh, can get customs, which means the number of people with customs versus those without might be somewhat low right now, but that that gap should close given a few more months when people have had time to earn tokens and whatnot. So let's see here. I'm just writing up a query for the database right here to pull the information from the live server. So I'm going to look at users who their rank is at least 5 and they have a custom sword. Is greater than 0. So it looks like, okay. Right now it looks like the ratio is about 20%. So there's about 5 people without customs for every person who has a custom, which is actually not as hardcore as you would think. And this is including every character from rank 5 and higher. So rank 5 to rank 8 characters. About a 5 to 1 ratio on characters who don't have custom versus characters who do have custom. Next question. Why do the race boss boosts vary? I've seen them at 20%, 30%, and I think 40%. Does it have something to do with how fast you defeat it? No, this is actually due to catch-up mechanics, which are basically when one race has taken a lot less world and defender bosses, so they haven't won world boss very often, and or they haven't been able to successfully invade and kill the opposing race's defender boss as often. There's sort of a balance where the system looks at how often each race has done it, and if one race is like really far ahead of the other one, that means they're getting a lot more total boosts. So the system applies some catch-up mechanics to the race that's behind, where it adds. There's 3 tiers. The first tier I think adds a 10% extra boost amount. Oh no, it adds 30 minutes extra time. Tier 2 adds an extra 10%, and Tier 3 adds another 10% on top of that. So if you're at tier 2 catch-up mechanics, like you're pretty far behind, you'll get a 10% extra boost. And if you're at tier 3, where you're really behind, you get 20% extra boost. So that's what it is. It's basically just based on how well your race is doing versus the other race. And the reason I did that was because let's say one race happened to get an advantage, and they were suddenly able to win a lot of the bosses. What that would create is a situation where not only do they currently have an advantage, but they also, due to the fact they're getting a lot more boosts, they would also be able to pull ahead in training. And that would create a snowball effect where when you get ahead, you then get more training, which you can use to get farther ahead, which you can then keep getting farther ahead with. So in order to make it so that a race that's not doing very well on bosses isn't completely out of the game in terms of being able to train compared to the race, we have those catch-up mechanics in. So in training-wise, it bridges the gap a bit. It's never going to be actually more due to the way the catch-up mechanics are set. Um, with the number of bosses you take, you can't actually get more training gains than the race that's ahead, but you get closer, so you're not like massively behind. Next question. My immolate damage can't get above 8k whether I use ult immo or armory immo, and I'm using 2 CRs. Am I doing something wrong? Okay, so this question is a little bit difficult to answer without seeing battle logs, I don't know which CRs you're using, who your opponent is. Did they use DR? Did you have to break through AoEs? It's really hard to tell without the circumstances. I can tell. I checked your build really quickly, and I did see that your ultimate immolate is 15%. you will definitely get a lot more damage out of that ult immolate if you set it to 35%. So if you're looking for the immolation, you need maximum effect. If you're trying to do the 2CR immolate, you're better off with a 35% ult immolate instead of a 15%. The 15% ult immolate is more for like the cheesier CR recoil immolate or something like that, or just a recoil immolate from a Resid Core user. Next question: who was the better king in your opinion, Amir Emotivo or Jack/Vizarel? Bear in mind, Amir defeated him a handful of times with ease and won every boss he was on. Okay, so this is a difficult question. I don't think the primary factor in who makes a good king is who's the strongest in combat power, which is a little bit ironic since that's one of the primary factors for taking the seat. But you have to, in my mind, the person who makes the best king or captain commander is the one who's most able to benefit their race, who's most able to create a positive effect on their race. And in that sense, I think probably based on what I've seen around both times, Jack was probably a better king, but it's hard to say. Okay, it looks like that's it for the game questions. We're on to miscellaneous questions. First question, what do you think happens when an Arankar is purified by a Shinigami? Would they remember being a hollow and sent to Soul Society? Ooh, that's a good question. Would they remember being a hollow? If we're going to go based on logic, you would think that they would. However, actually, I'm going to say I don't think they do. I think their mind would probably be wiped of everything they did while they were hollow because it was mentioned that they're forgiven of all their sins, right? And also, we've never heard of any instances where souls in Soul Society remembered being a hollow. So, based on those two things, it actually would be logical for someone to not remember their life as a hollow, which would, remove their any potential negative influence they would still have from it. Next question, very related. How do you think Konso and the purification of hollows work? Konso is soul burial for those who don't know the term. It's where the Shinigami takes their Zanpakuto, they take the heel of it with a little kanji on it, and they place it onto a soul's forehead. So the purification of hollows work. How do they get sent to Soul Society? It was never properly explained in the manga or anime. This just seems like another ability like the Shinigami have. The same way that they suddenly gain the ability to use Kido. It's just seems like another manipulation of spiritual energy, and it's just a power that they get as Shinigami to do this. So as for why they were given this power, you'd have to go to the origins of the Shinigami, which I still haven't read the manga yet, so I'm not sure if that was explained there. But it's obviously related to that. So it's just an ability that they've been given, and when they purify a hollow, they did say that all of the sins or the crimes that were committed while the person was a hollow are like forgiven and just wiped away, and then they're basically turned back into a normal soul and sent to Soul Society. So it would be like if when they were a human and they died and their soul left their body, if they had been purified right then, soul burial then, and just sent to Soul Society, it's basically like how it ends up working. Next question. What is your favorite scene or time in the Wonder Woman movie? Mine is the entire raid on the slaved village. Ooh, the raid on the slaved village was good. I liked when she broke into the building and she was fighting all of them and like sliding, especially when she did like the long slide on the floor in order to on her legs, and then she kicked the one leg out from them. That was pretty cool. But as for my favorite moment, I actually think it might be when she had killed the for anybody who hasn't watched the Wonder Woman movie, skip the next minute of this. If you have not watched it, skip the next minute. So my favorite moment might be when she killed General Ludendorff, and because she thought she'd killed Ares, but then she sees that everything didn't stop, and it's just her entire world. She's just like everything that she's based her premises on is like crumbling, and watching the conflict in her, on her face and inside of her, just trying to reconcile this is pretty it was a pretty deep moment. But yeah, the whole movie was pretty good. I very much enjoyed the movie. And we got 20 seconds left. I told the people for the spoiler alert to not watch the next minute, which will be up in 15 seconds. So I'll just wait until then. Ten more seconds. How are you guys doing today? Okay, next question. Any hopes for a Robin slash Nightwing movie? Probably not. I don't see how they would fit that into this movie universe. I don't see how they'd find it a good fit for it. Next question. How do you feel about Spider-Man Homecoming? I am very excited for it. The movie looked awesome. There has been some, the last Spider-Man movies, they ended up having some questionable things. I really didn't like the look of Jamie Foxx's character as Electro. Although I liked some aspects of the movie. I have an interesting thought about this where I think that Tobey Maguire played a good Peter Parker, but Andrew Garfield played a better Spider-Man. I think Tom Holland actually is able to do both. So I'm pretty excited for this. And yeah. Next question. As you amp up to advertise for more new players, I pose this superhero question. Why do you think Marvel dominates the box office while DC rules the TV screen? It's actually pretty simple. Marvel tried to stay true to the comic book roots of their characters, and they modernized them a little bit, but they tried to really stay true to the roots of their characters. Whereas DC, I think it was after they saw Christopher Nolan's treatment of The Dark Knight and how successful it was, they got really caught up on this idea of, oh, we need to make these raw, visceral, like different incarnations of the characters. And they also get too caught up with the action, and they seem to forget about the character development. This also relates to the next question, which I'll sort of answer both at the same time because the next question someone said is Marvel or DC, i.e., relatable heroes to awesome, well-planned villains. And here's the problem: relatable heroes with Marvel, I agree. That's like sort of, you got like your Peter Parker there, which one of the strengths of Spider-Man is that he's not some rich billionaire. He's not some god. He doesn't have like he can't fly. He's not invulnerable. He's very human, and he has to deal with human struggles, and that's one of the strengths of Spider-Man. So the relatable heroes, I agree. Marvel has some really good ones, but DC, right? The strength that the person who asked this question posed is awesome, well-planned villains. Here's the problem: the DC movies, a lot of them have not had that. Man of Steel was a pretty good movie. I like Man of Steel, right? But then you get to Batman versus Superman, and the final villain is like a completely like unrelatable, and by unrelatable I mean I don't connect with the villain at all. And usually you can connect with villains like the Joker or Lex Luthor, right? These are usually like awesome villains who like you understand their motivations. And the Joker, it's even better when they have a noticeable effect on the main hero outside of combat. Because the really good villains don't just, kick their ass in combat. No, 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 no. The really good villains get inside the minds of the heroes and they mess with them. So, in that extent, the final, what's his name, Doomsday from Batman vs Superman, he was just a giant CGI blob who was punching them around a lot, and I completely disconnected from the movie as soon as they started fighting him because I just he didn't look anything like a fusion of Lex Luthor and General Zod. If they'd included some aspects of General Zod's consciousness or something, I could have seen it if he'd had some dialogue, but he had no dialogue. And you just contrast this to a movie like, let's take The Dark Knight, right? Where they had the Joker. And he was in everybody's heads. And he was a villain, right? But like, it was fun to watch him. Whereas, was it fun to watch Doomsday? I mean, he's like a giant blob of CGI. He's not that interesting. So that's one of the major problems it's had. And then you had Suicide Squad, and it was like, the plot was kind of stupid. From the very beginning, I was like, why is Amanda Waller messing with this magical person who has a ridiculous amount of power? And it immediately bites her in the ass. So literally, like, it just made no sense. And then the other thing that they were fighting most of the time, okay, they got to the very end and they were fighting Enchantress, right? But up until that point, they were fighting those like faceless blobs where they're like moving around, like they got these weird like things on their face moving around. And again, they're faceless. It's not faceless villains unless it's like a part of a mystery, like you got a mask, and but then they later reveal the mask. Like that's cool, but these grunts that they looked like CGI, and I think that's one of the big areas that Marvel has kept their movies grounded. Okay, granted, they got a little more out there with things like Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy. They got a little bit more out there, but for the most part, they keep their movies grounded and believable. You believe that someone really smart in today, maybe 10 years from now, or if someone really smart was born, that maybe they could be Tony Stark, maybe they could invent an Iron Man suit. It's sort of believable. You believe that maybe if there's all kinds of genetic experiments going on, maybe one of those might be a spider, maybe it could bite someone and mutate them a bit. It's one step beyond believability instead of like four steps beyond. So they keep things more believable, which keeps it grounded and it keeps you in the moment. It keeps you enjoying it. It keeps you feeling like this could be happening in your world. Whereas DC tends to go really far away from that and just take you completely out of it, which works in comics because people or like in comics and cartoons because people go there for an escape. But with movies, when you're actually watching real people, you really have to stay on making sure it's still believable. At least with this, or else you lose some of the coolness. DC has also made a number of questionable story decisions and failed to develop characters. Character development is very important, and I think when you lose that and you don't make sure that that's in there, you need character development of the hero and you need character development of the villain so that we can connect to the villain and see like, okay, yeah, I understand what his motives are, his personality, his likes and dislikes. Like I get it, right? And it's interesting to watch them clash because I'm now invested in the characters. But if you don't properly build up the villain, then it's not that cool. Next question. If Superman and Batman entered the Matrix, would they fall to Agent Smith? Probably not. Superman has enough raw power, and Batman could probably figure out how to hack his way back out of the Matrix. Next question. Would you be like Major Motoko Kusanagi, not female though, from Ghost in the Shell? I mean, like a cyborg, or would you rather have hands like Luke Skywalker? Ooh, tough question. If I had to pick one of these options, then if the cyborg body could have like full sense of feeling and touch and all normal human functions, such as ability to have intimate encounters, then I would probably go with the cyborg body. But if it didn't have the whole sense of touch, feel, smell, and all of the normal human senses, then I think it would be a really terrible experience. And then I would want to have the hands like Luke Skywalker. But I think having hands like Luke Skywalker would be a problem, or it would be really uncomfortable because any type of metal to flesh interface is never very comfortable unless technology advances like super far. Then maybe. Looks like that's it for this week. I hope you guys are all looking forward to the Hell event. I'm definitely looking forward to it. We're working hard. I was on Skype with Hito for like 6 hours. We were working on it yesterday. We're going to keep working on it today and tomorrow, and then we're going to test it out. So find a couple people you're ready to team up with. We are going to be allowing cross-race teams for this event. Um, get your strategies ready. Be prepared for some fun fights, some fun non-fight action. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later.